Hello, everyone, and welcome to English Listening Practice Hub. My name is Emma, and I am really happy you're here with me today. Take a deep breath, relax your shoulders, let your mind slow down. In this space, you can improve your English in a calm and natural way, simply by listening. Today, I want to share something personal and meaningful. How I learned English without a teacher. This is my own story, a story about mistakes, frustration, small victories, and the slow but powerful process of learning a new language on my own. As you listen, focus on the rhythm of the words. Let the sentences flow. While you relax, your English absorbs everything naturally. So let's begin. I was not born speaking English. In fact, for many years, English felt like a distant world to me, a language that belonged to movies, music, airports, and people far more confident than I was. I wanted to learn it, but I had no teacher, no classes, and no one to guide me. All I had was curiosity and a feeling inside my chest that said, maybe this language can open a door for me. At first, learning alone felt scary. I didn't know where to start. I tried reading short texts, but the words looked heavy and complicated. I tried watching videos, but the speakers talked too fast. I tried listening to songs, but I couldn't understand even simple lines. And every time I failed, the same question appeared in my mind. Is it even possible to learn English alone? One evening, everything changed. I remember sitting in my room with my headphones on. I found a simple video online, a slow English story for beginners. The voice was calm, soft, and clear. I didn't understand every word, but for the first time, I felt something different. I felt comfortable. I felt connected. And I thought, if I listen like this every day, maybe something inside me will grow. So, I made a promise to myself. I will learn English through listening. I will learn through stories. I will learn through sound, not through pressure. The first few weeks were messy. Some days I understood a lot. Other days I understood nothing. But I continued. I listened while cooking. I listened while walking. I listened before sleeping. Little by little, the sounds began to make sense. Words that once felt strange started to feel familiar. Phrases that once confused me became clear. My mind was learning quietly, almost secretly. I didn't study grammar books. I didn't memorize long vocabulary lists. I didn't force myself to speak before I was ready. Instead, I allowed English to enter my life like music, slowly, gently, naturally. After some months, something extraordinary happened. One morning, I was listening to a story I had heard many times before. But this time, the sentences felt different. They felt soft. They felt clear. I didn't need to translate anything. The meaning just came into my mind like a small light turning on. It was the first moment I felt confident. I realized that learning a language alone is not a punishment. It's a journey. And every day you listen, you build a bridge in your brain, even if you don't see it at first. From that day, English became part of my daily life. I listened to long stories, podcasts, conversations, book summaries. I explored new ideas while improving my language at the same time. And step by step, English stopped being a challenge. It became a friend. I didn't need a teacher. I needed consistency. I needed patience. I needed courage to continue even when progress felt invisible. This is where my journey begins, a journey that later helped me speak with others, travel more confidently, understand new cultures, and eventually tell my story to you today. This is the story of how I learned English without a teacher. And now, let me take you deeper into this journey, the lessons, the mistakes, the discoveries, and the quiet moments that changed everything for me. In the beginning, learning English alone felt like walking through a dark room. I knew there was something valuable inside, but I couldn't see anything clearly. Every word felt like a small obstacle. Every sentence felt too fast. Every sound felt unfamiliar. But slowly, I realized something important. I didn't need to understand everything. I only needed to stay close to the language. So, I kept listening. I remember waking up early, putting on my headphones, and playing the same story again and again. At first, my mind resisted. It said, "You don't understand. Stop trying." But I ignored that voice. I trusted the process. I let the sounds move through me like soft waves. Even when I didn't understand each word, something inside me was learning, quietly, silently, naturally. Little by little, English became familiar. Not perfect, not easy, just familiar. And familiar was enough to keep me going. I began to notice patterns. Certain verbs appeared again and again. Simple phrases repeated in many stories. My ears started to catch the rhythm of the language, the soft rises, the gentle pauses, the natural speed. I wasn't memorizing anything. I was absorbing it. One day, I tried something different. I listened to a story while washing dishes. Surprisingly, it felt easier. My mind was relaxed. I wasn't forcing myself to study. I was just living my life with English in the background. That moment changed everything. I realized that language is not something you attack. It's something you invite into your life. So I invited English everywhere. I listened on the bus. I listened in the shower. I listened while folding clothes. I listened during long walks when the world felt quiet and peaceful. During these walks, something beautiful happened. The sentences became clearer. My mind started guessing meanings before the speaker finished the sentence. It felt almost magical, like unlocking a hidden ability. I began to feel proud of myself. I had no teacher beside me. No one corrected my mistakes. No one told me what to do. But I was growing. And the more I grew, the more I wanted to continue. Then I discovered something powerful. Stories help you learn faster than rules. Stories give you context. They give you emotion. They give you real-life examples without effort. When you hear a phrase inside a story, you don't just learn the words, you learn the feeling behind them. You understand the situation, the tone, the intention. This emotional connection made everything easier. There were still difficult days. Days when my mind felt tired. Days when I understood nothing. Days when English sounded too fast and too complicated. But even on those days, I didn't stop. I listened for just 3 minutes. Even that tiny moment kept the habit alive. Over time, English stopped feeling like a school subject. It became a part of my identity, a quiet space I could enter whenever I wanted, a companion. I didn't know it back then, but those small daily choices, Listening during breakfast, listening before sleep, listening while walking were building something strong inside me. A foundation, a confidence, a sense of belonging in a language that was once impossible for me. And slowly, almost without noticing, I was no longer a beginner. I was becoming a real English user. This is how my journey continued. Simple steps, small moments, everyday listening, and a growing belief that I could do this alone. And in the next part, I will take you deeper into the moments that shaped my confidence, the breakthroughs, the surprises, and the mistakes that taught me more than any textbook ever could. When I continued learning on my own, something inside me slowly began to change. At first, I didn't notice it. It was quiet, almost invisible. But day after day, I felt myself getting a little closer to the language. Not because I studied harder, not because I memorized more, but because English was becoming a part of my daily life, like a soft background sound that followed me everywhere. I remember one morning clearly. I woke up early, before the sun rose, and the world felt silent and calm. I put my headphones on and played a simple English story. My room was still half dark. I sat on my bed and listened. The voice was slow, warm, and easy to follow. And for the first time, I wasn't thinking, I need to understand this. I was just listening. And during that moment, I realized something important. Understanding grows when you stop forcing it. This idea changed my entire approach. I started allowing English to enter my life naturally. I didn't create pressure. I didn't feel guilty when I didn't understand something. Instead, I let the language float around me like light. Some days I understood more, some days less, but I continued. One of the biggest lessons I learned was this: you don't need perfect focus to learn a language. You only need consistent exposure. So I began to listen with freedom. I listened while cooking. I listened while walking. I listened while preparing coffee. I listened when I brushed my hair or cleaned my room. English became a companion, not a challenge. And then something surprising happened. I noticed that I was starting to understand even when I wasn't fully paying attention. Words I had heard many times started to connect inside my mind. Short phrases became automatic. I didn't translate them anymore. They simply appeared in my thoughts. It felt magical, not because it was fast, but because it was natural. Around this time, I also learned the power of emotional connection. When a story touched my heart, I remembered the language more easily. When a character felt real, I learned their phrases without effort. When the message felt warm, the words stayed with me longer. Language is not only about grammar, it is about feeling. So I chose content that made me feel something: stories, personal experiences, slow conversations, emotional topics, inspiring lessons. When I cared about what I was listening to, my mind opened like a door. Learning became easy. But of course, not every day was smooth. There were days when I felt tired. Days when English sounded too fast. Days when I wanted to give up. On those days, I reminded myself of something simple. Progress is not loud. It grows quietly. Sometimes you only notice it weeks later. So even on my difficult days, I listen for at least a few minutes. Even 1 minute. Even 30 seconds. I refused to break the habit. And that tiny promise to myself kept the fire alive. Another important thing happened during this stage of my journey. I discovered the joy of listening to English outside in the real world. When I walked through the park or by the street, the sounds of nature mixed with the sounds of English in my ears. Trees, wind, footsteps, birds, all of them blended with the rhythm of the language. And for some reason, everything felt easier. Maybe because movement relaxes the brain. Maybe because fresh air clears thoughts. Maybe because walking turns listening into a peaceful experience. Whatever the reason was, listening outside became one of my favorite habits. I walked for 30 minutes every day, sometimes longer, and just listened. No notebooks, no translations, no stress. Just the world, my headphones, and the soft voice of English. During these walks, I started dreaming in the language. Not full sentences, not full thoughts, but small pieces. Words appeared in my mind like sparks. Tiny moments of English. It didn't happen often, but every time it did, I smiled. It was a sign that my mind had accepted the language. I didn't realize it back then, but this stage was preparing me for something even bigger. Confidence. Not perfect grammar confidence. Not perfect pronunciation confidence. But confidence in understanding. Confidence in listening. Confidence in being patient with myself. And this confidence became the foundation of everything that came next. My journey continued with more stories, more daily listening, more small victories, and quiet breakthroughs. But this stage, this slow transformation, was where I learned the truth. You don't learn a language by fighting it. You learn it by living with it. And from here, my journey would take an even deeper turn, one that changed the way I listened, the way I understood, and the way I connected with English forever. As my journey continued, I reached a moment that felt like a quiet turning point, a moment when English stopped being just a skill I wanted to learn and became a space where I felt safe, calm, and connected. I didn't recognize the change immediately. It happened slowly, like the way morning light enters a room little by little. But one day, everything felt different. It started with a simple habit, listening before sleep. Every night, just before closing my eyes, I played a slow English story. My room was dark, the air was quiet, and English filled the space with soft rhythm. I didn't plan to study. I didn't push myself to understand every detail. I just listened. Sometimes I fell asleep halfway through the story. Sometimes I stayed awake until the end. But every night, my mind relaxed into the language. Little by little, I noticed that the words stayed with me the next morning. Not because I memorized them, not because I studied them, but because I heard them during a calm moment. I discovered something beautiful. When your mind is relaxed, it learns faster. This became a key part of my journey. During the day, I often felt distracted or tired. But at night, everything slowed down. English didn't feel like a task anymore. It felt like company, like a soft voice guiding me gently through the rhythm of another language. Around this time, I also realized something powerful about understanding. You don't suddenly understand everything. Understanding grows in layers, like the petals of a flower opening over time. The first layer was recognizing sounds. The second layer was identifying familiar words. The third layer was catching whole phrases. The fourth layer was understanding general meaning without translating. The final layer was feeling the message instead of analyzing it. And all of this happened through listening. One special memory from this stage stays with me even today. I was listening to a long English story while walking in the afternoon. The weather was warm, the sky was soft, and the world felt peaceful. Suddenly, without warning, I understood an entire paragraph, every single sentence, without thinking, without trying, without translating. It felt like magic. I actually stopped walking for a moment. I looked around. Nothing in the world had changed, but something inside me had. I felt a warm excitement in my chest, a quiet joy. That moment became one of the strongest memories of my learning journey. It taught me that progress happens silently, underground, like roots growing beneath the soil. You don't see anything for a long time. And then, one day, something beautiful appears. As the weeks went by, I continued listening not because I had to, but because I wanted to. English became a comfort, a routine, a small piece of peace at the end of each day. And then another shift happened, a bigger one, a deeper one. I realized that English was changing the way I thought.
Not in a dramatic way.
Not like I suddenly became fluent overnight.
No, it was softer than that.
Sometimes, when I felt angry, I found myself calming down by listening to a story. Sometimes, when I felt lonely, an English voice kept me company. Sometimes, when life felt heavy, learning something new gave me strength. The language became a space where I could breathe. I began to understand something that I had never realized before. Learning a language on your own is not only about words. It's about becoming someone new. Every new phrase became a small piece of confidence. Every clear sentence became a small victory. Every moment of understanding became a reminder that I was capable of more than I believed. And then, of course, there were moments of frustration, moments when I felt stuck, moments when English felt fast again, moments when confusion returned. But this time, I didn't panic, because I understood that frustration is part of the process. Every learner meets it. Every learner must stay patient through it. And patience became one of my strongest skills. I learned to trust the journey, even on difficult days. I learned to continue slowly, without pressure. I learned to measure progress not by perfection, but by consistency. And slowly, very slowly, the language that once felt distant became a part of my identity, a quiet friend, a daily routine, a reflection of who I was becoming. This stage of my journey taught me that learning alone does not mean being alone. My headphones, my stories, my nightly routine, all of them were with me. English became the bridge between who I was and who I wanted to be. And from here, my journey would grow even deeper into confidence, into speaking, and into the realization that learning without a teacher can shape you in ways you never expect. As my journey continued, I entered a new stage, a stage where understanding was no longer my biggest challenge. Instead, the challenge became something deeper, something more emotional, trusting myself. I realized that learning a language alone requires a kind of inner strength that no one talks about. It wasn't just about vocabulary or grammar anymore. It was about courage. The courage to continue. The courage to believe in slow progress. The courage to accept mistakes. And most importantly, the courage to imagine myself as someone who could actually speak this language one day. Around this time, I discovered a new habit that pushed my learning further. I began listening to English first thing in the morning, before checking messages, before opening the window, before even thinking about the day ahead. I would press play, close my eyes, and let the sound of English shape the start of my day. It was peaceful, grounding, and strangely powerful. There's something special about morning listening. Your mind is quiet. Your thoughts are soft. Your heart is open. And English enters more deeply during these moments. After a few weeks, I noticed that my brain responded faster. I caught meaning more quickly. Phrases felt clearer. My mind didn't resist as much. Instead, it welcomed the language like an early sunshine. This morning habit became one of the strongest tools in my journey. But there was another challenge waiting for me: fear of speaking. Even though I understood a lot through listening, I still felt nervous about using my voice. Speaking felt like standing on a stage without knowing what to say. I worried about sounding wrong. I worried about mistakes. I worried about the silence between words. But something inside me whispered, "You don't need to speak perfectly to begin. You only need to speak honestly." So I started with something small, something private. I spoke to myself. I talked to myself while making tea. I described my day while walking. I repeated sentences I heard in stories. I whispered phrases before sleep. These were not full conversations. They were small, gentle experiments. A few seconds here, a few seconds there. But these small moments changed everything. Speaking slowly, softly, privately gave me space to grow without fear. I didn't judge myself. I didn't force fluency. I didn't aim for perfection. I simply tried to connect my voice to the language I had been listening to for so long. And then one day, something surprising happened. I was walking in the park, listening to a story I had heard many times before. The narrator said a simple phrase. I didn't expect that. Without thinking, I repeated it out loud. The words felt natural. They felt comfortable. They felt like mine. That small moment filled me with warmth. I realized that speaking is not a performance. It is a continuation of listening. Listening fills you. Speaking releases what you have collected. This idea softened my fear. So, I continued. Every time I heard a short, simple phrase that felt natural, I repeated it. Not loudly, not perfectly, just enough to feel the words in my mouth. Slowly, my voice and my listening began to connect. At this stage, I made another discovery. You don't need to know every word to understand the message. This realization was freeing. It removed the pressure from my mind. Understanding became lighter, more intuitive. When people learn alone, they often feel they must know everything. But you don't. Understanding is mostly about context, tone, rhythm, and emotion. And once I accepted this, English became softer, friendlier, almost like a warm breeze. Something else changed too. My confidence began to grow, not suddenly, not dramatically, but gently, like steps building a staircase. I started feeling comfortable listening to faster speakers. Movies didn't scare me anymore. Podcasts weren't impossible anymore. I could follow ideas even when I didn't recognize every term. This confidence also began to appear in real life. One day at a cafe, I heard two tourists speaking English. Normally, I would stay quiet and avoid looking at them. But this time I wanted to understand. So I listened, not directly, not obviously, just naturally. And I understood almost everything. That moment made me smile. Not because I was perfect, but because I had reached a place I never believed I could reach alone. The truth is, confidence doesn't come when you reach advanced level. Confidence comes when you realize you are capable of more than you thought. It comes when you look back and see how far you've come. And by this stage of my journey, I was far from perfect, but I was far from where I started too. My listening was stronger. My speaking was slowly awakening. My fear was softer. My hope was bigger. And all of this happened without a teacher, just with patience, routine, and the quiet belief that I could keep going. From here, my journey would continue even deeper into real conversations, unexpected breakthroughs, embarrassing moments, and the shift from studying English to actually living in English. As I moved further on this journey, something essential began to shift. English stopped being a goal and became a space I lived in. Instead of thinking, I'm learning English, I started thinking, English is part of my day. This emotional shift changed everything. It took away the pressure. It allowed growth to feel natural instead of forced. And from this stage forward, every step felt lighter, more meaningful, and more connected to who I was becoming. It all started with one simple decision. I would stop measuring my progress. No more counting words. No more comparing myself to others. No more checking my level. I just wanted to enjoy the language. The moment I let go of these heavy expectations, my mind opened. Learning became softer. I noticed colors in the language I never saw before, the warmth of certain expressions, the musical rhythm of simple sentences, the emotional tone hidden inside everyday phrases. And then another surprising thing began to happen. English started appearing in my thoughts without permission. Not full conversations, of course, just tiny fragments. A phrase here, a word there, a small thought in English when I was cooking or walking or thinking about something simple. It felt strange at first. Then it felt exciting. Then it felt normal, like the language was making a home inside my mind. Around this time, I created a new habit that changed my progress in a massive way. I began listening to English during activities that normally felt empty. For example, a while waiting for the bus, a while cleaning my room, while folding clothes, a while walking slowly through the market, a while preparing breakfast, a while brushing my teeth. These moments were simple, but they added up. Instead of 20 minutes a day, I was listening 40, 60, even 90 minutes without trying. And the best part? It didn't feel like studying. It felt like living. One evening, I experienced something that became a key memory in my journey. I was listening to a long interview between two English speakers. The conversation flowed naturally, quickly, full of small jokes and cultural references. Normally, this type of content was too fast for me. But that night, something clicked. I wasn't understanding every word, but I was following the meaning easily. It felt like my brain had unlocked a new door. For the first time, I wasn't fighting to understand. I was simply listening. The language moved freely, like water flowing through a river. I felt calm, confident, and almost surprised by myself. This moment showed me something powerful. Understanding is not about decoding each word. Understanding is feeling the meaning. Once you understand that, you stop panicking when you hear unknown words. You stop freezing when someone speaks quickly. You stop trying to control the language and instead let it move naturally. This was one of the deepest lessons of my journey. A few weeks later, I faced another important moment. My first real conversation with a native speaker. It wasn't planned. It wasn't scheduled. It just happened. I was in a small cafe, waiting for my tea, when a tourist asked me a simple question in English. Normally, my heart would have raced. My hands would have shaken. But this time, something different happened. I answered. Not perfectly, not confidently, but I answered. And then the tourist asked a second question, and I answered that too. The conversation lasted maybe 1 minute, maybe less. But to me, it felt like a door opening, a door I had been afraid to touch for years. When the tourist smiled and said, "Thank you," I felt something warm rise inside my chest. I had done it. I had spoken English in real life. I didn't freeze. I didn't panic. I didn't run away. I communicated. I connected. I existed in the language. And that moment changed my confidence forever. From that day on, I became braver. I didn't force myself into long conversations, but I stopped running away from small ones. If someone asked me something in English, I didn't apologize immediately. Instead, I tried. Even if my voice was soft, even if my grammar wasn't perfect, even if I needed time to think, because I realized something deeper than all the techniques, habits, and routines. Learning a language is not about perfection. It is about participation. Every time you try, you grow. Every sentence you speak becomes a small victory. Every attempt strengthens your courage. And as my listening continued and my speaking slowly grew, I felt myself changing as a person. I became more patient, more curious, more open. The language didn't just teach me words, it taught me how to approach life with flexibility and kindness. English became a mirror that showed me my inner resilience. And from this point in my journey, everything that happened next, the deeper listening, the more complex understanding, the emotional breakthroughs, all came from this new foundation of quiet confidence. As my journey continued, I entered a stage of learning that felt more emotional than anything before. This was the time when English started to influence my thoughts, my habits, my confidence, and even the way I understood myself. It no longer felt like something I was studying. It felt like something that lived with me, something that walked beside me, something that quietly shaped my days and softened the way I looked at the world. During this period, I began to notice how English affected my inner voice, not the voice I spoke with, but the voice I thought with. Sometimes, when I was deciding what to cook, a small question appeared in English. When I was planning my day, a simple phrase in English floated into my mind. When I felt sad or tired, I remembered comforting sentences I had heard in stories. My inner voice was becoming bilingual. It didn't happen all at once. It happened slowly. A sentence here, a word there. But these tiny moments had a deep impact. They showed me that English was no longer outside of me. It was inside my mind, shaping the way I felt and understood the world. Around this time, I also started re-listening to stories from the beginning of my journey, stories that once felt difficult, stories I struggled with, stories that confused me. And something incredible happened. They felt easy. Phrases that once felt fast now felt soft. Sentences that once felt impossible now felt clear. Words that once scared me now felt gentle, familiar, comforting. This experience filled me with a quiet kind of pride, not the loud pride that wants applause, but the soft pride that lives deep in your chest and reminds you that you have grown. I closed my eyes and whispered to myself, "You're getting there slowly, but surely." One of the most important lessons I learned during this stage was this: you don't notice your progress day by day. You notice it when you look back. And looking back, I saw a completely different person. Someone who used to feel afraid of English now felt connected to it. Someone who used to panic at fast speech now stayed calm. Someone who doubted their ability to learn alone now trusted themselves. This trust became one of the most powerful tools in my journey. Around this period, I developed a new habit, one that shaped my confidence even more deeply. I started shadowing. Shadowing means repeating what you hear, softly and naturally, like an echo, not forcing your voice, not trying to be perfect, just letting the sound pass through you and then out of you. I did this while listening to slow stories. I whispered after the narrator. Sometimes I repeated whole sentences. Sometimes just a phrase. Sometimes only the rhythm. This practice changed the way my mouth moved in English. At first, my tongue felt heavy. My lips felt stiff. My voice felt uncertain. But slowly, repeating these sounds became easier. My mouth learned the movements. My tongue found the right shape. My voice became more comfortable. I realized something important. Speaking is physical. Your body needs time to learn the shapes of new sounds. So I continued shadowing, softly, patiently, without pressure. Listening taught my mind. Shadowing taught my voice. Another beautiful thing happened around this time. I began to understand English not only with my ears, but with my feeling. There were moments when I didn't know every word, but I understood the emotion. I understood the intention. I understood the message behind the words. It was like listening to music. You don't need to understand every note to feel the meaning. This emotional understanding made the language feel alive. Around this time, I experienced a moment I will never forget. I was sitting near a window on a rainy evening, listening to a long English podcast. The host was talking about life, about fear, hope, resilience, small steps, and the quiet power of daily progress. His voice was warm. The rain outside made a soft rhythm. My room felt peaceful. Halfway through the episode, I realized something. I was not trying to understand. I was simply understanding. The words flowed through me. The ideas touched me. The message reached my heart. It felt like a small miracle, a moment when the language and I felt completely connected. And that moment taught me something I will carry with me forever. Language is not learned through force. Language is learned through connection. This connection grew deeper every day. When I was tired, English calmed me. When I was stressed, English distracted me. When I was lonely, English kept me company. When I was curious, English gave me answers. The language became a friend, a quiet, loyal friend, one who never judged me, never rushed me, and always waited for me. This stage of my journey taught me the true meaning of learning alone. It's not about being isolated. It's about building a relationship with the language in your own way. A relationship built on patience, trust, curiosity, and emotion. And from here, my journey continued into even deeper waters, into moments of courage, moments of real conversation, moments of embarrassing mistakes, and moments of surprising triumphs that shaped my confidence forever. As I continued forward, the next stage of my journey pushed me into moments that were more real, more emotional, and sometimes more uncomfortable. This was the period when English left my headphones and entered my real life. Not perfectly,
Not confidently.
but naturally, slowly, and honestly. It began with small interactions, tiny conversations that lasted only seconds. A question in a cafe, a short exchange in a store, a simple greeting from a traveler. I didn't plan these moments, and I didn't feel ready for them. But life doesn't wait for your perfect moment. Life simply happens. And one day, English happened. I remember the first time someone asked me for directions. I felt a sudden rush in my chest, a mix of panic, excitement, and the fear of sounding wrong. My throat tightened. My mind started searching for words like someone searching for keys in a dark room. But then something surprising happened. Instead of freezing, I answered. Not perfectly,
Not smoothly.
but clearly enough. And when the person said, "Thank you," I felt a warmth spread through my whole body. It was small, but it was real. It was proof that I could use English outside the safe space of my room. The world didn't end. The person understood me, and I survived the moment. This experience opened something inside me, a door I didn't know existed. After that, I stopped running away from small interactions. Sometimes I didn't speak, but I didn't avoid them either. I stayed open. I let life bring me whatever English moments it wanted to bring. And slowly, my fear transformed into curiosity. What if I can answer again? What if I can understand more? What if I can actually talk to someone for a full minute? These questions were scary but exciting. Around this time, I also discovered the power of making mistakes. Until this stage, I was careful, too careful. I didn't want to sound wrong. I didn't want to embarrass myself. I didn't want to say something that made no sense. But when I began speaking in real life, I learned something important. Your mistakes teach you more than your successes ever will. One day, I mixed up two simple words. The person tilted their head, confused. My cheeks got warm and my throat tightened. But instead of panicking, I corrected myself. The other person laughed softly and said, "Don't worry, it happens." After that moment, I realized mistakes were not dangerous. They were normal, human. Even native speakers make mistakes. Why was I expecting perfection from myself? This realization freed me. I stopped trying to hide my weaknesses. I stopped apologizing every time I spoke. I stopped judging myself so harshly. I allowed myself to exist in the language, imperfect but growing. With this new mindset, my listening also changed. I began listening with more confidence, more patience, more emotional openness. When I heard new vocabulary, I didn't panic. When I heard fast speech, I didn't freeze. When I missed a sentence, I didn't rewind immediately. I allowed myself to experience English the way I experienced my first language, with mistakes, gaps, and guesses. Guessing became one of my strongest tools, because guessing means you trust your brain. You trust your intuition. You trust the process. This trust made me feel lighter. It helped me relax even in situations that once terrified me. And when you relax, you understand more. Around this stage, I also began listening to longer, more complex content. Interviews, documentaries, storytelling podcasts, even motivational speeches. Not because I suddenly felt advanced, but because I felt ready to experience English in deeper ways. At first, I couldn't understand everything, but I understood enough. Enough to follow the topic. Enough to feel the emotion. Enough to stay connected to the message. And the more I listened, the more my understanding expanded. It wasn't linear. Some days I understood a lot. Other days, almost nothing. But I kept going because I finally understood the truth. Language learning is not a staircase. It's a wave. Sometimes the wave rises. Sometimes it falls. But it always moves forward. This realization made me calmer, stronger, and more patient. I no longer panicked during bad days. I knew the wave would rise again. Then something special happened, something that showed me how much I had grown. One evening, I joined an online group where people from different countries talked in English about daily topics. I didn't speak much. I mostly listened, but I understood almost everything. And when the group leader asked, "Emma, what do you think?" I took a breath and answered. My voice was soft. My grammar was simple, but my message was clear. And when someone replied, "I agree with Emma," my heart felt full. Not because I spoke perfectly, but because I was part of the conversation, part of a real exchange, part of a world I never believed I could enter without a teacher. This was when English became more than a language to me. It became a doorway to new people, new ideas, new experiences, new versions of myself. During this stage, I realized that learning a language alone teaches you something deeper than vocabulary. It teaches you resilience. It teaches you self-kindness. It teaches you how to be brave even when your voice shakes. And from here, the journey would continue toward the most transformative part, not just speaking, not just listening, but truly living in English without fear, without apology, and without limits. As my journey moved into its final stage, I began to understand something profound. Learning English without a teacher had never truly been about the language itself. Yes, I wanted to understand stories, speak with confidence, and follow conversations with ease. But beneath those goals, something deeper was happening. I was changing. I was growing. I was becoming someone who trusted her own steps, who believed in slow progress, who embraced challenges with patience instead of fear. This stage felt different from everything before, not because the language was suddenly easy, but because I had become stronger. English was no longer a mountain in front of me. It was a path beneath my feet. Around this time, I developed a final, powerful habit, one that tied all my learning together. I started thinking about my day in English, not out loud, not perfectly, just quietly inside my mind. I would wake up and think, today I will go for a walk.
Or,
I feel a little tired, but I'm okay. Simple thoughts. Nothing complicated. Nothing dramatic. But each thought was a small seed. A small act of courage. A small reminder that the language lived inside me now. Thinking in English wasn't something I forced. It happened naturally, like the way a plant grows towards sunlight. Slowly, quietly, strongly. This mental shift made speaking easier. My sentences came out more naturally. I no longer built them word by word. They simply flowed from the thoughts already forming in English. Even when I made mistakes, the sentences felt more connected, more alive. Confidence grew quietly, just like everything else on this journey. Around this time, I decided to challenge myself with something bigger, something that would test everything I had learned. I started watching entire movies in English with no subtitles. The first movie was difficult. I missed a lot. I got lost in fast conversations. I didn't understand every joke, but I watched until the end. The second movie felt easier. The third even easier. By the fifth movie, I realized something incredible. Even when I didn't understand every word, I understood the story. I understood the emotions. I understood the relationships. I understood the message. This realization filled me with gratitude for all the small steps I had taken. The morning listening, the nightly stories, the gentle shadowing, the walks with headphones, the tiny conversations, the brave moments, the embarrassing mistakes. None of those steps looked impressive on their own, but together they built a bridge from the person I used to be to the person I was becoming. A few weeks later, I had an experience that felt like a true milestone. I was speaking with a visitor from another country. We talked for several minutes about simple things: travel, weather, food, life. When the conversation ended, the person smiled and said, "You speak really well. I didn't have any trouble understanding you." I felt my chest warm instantly, not because the person thought I was perfect, but because someone had understood me fully, clearly, naturally, in a language I learned alone, slowly, patiently, without a teacher. That moment felt like the end of a long journey and the beginning of a new one. I walked home feeling light. I thought about the girl who once felt scared of English, the girl who thought she wasn't capable, the girl who doubted herself every time she heard a fast sentence, the girl who felt alone in her learning. She had no idea she would become someone who could listen, understand, speak, and feel confident in a language she once feared. This final stage taught me that learning a language alone is not simply about discipline or routine. It is about self-belief. It is about showing up every day, even when progress feels invisible. It is about choosing courage over perfection. It is about being kind to yourself while you grow. And most importantly, It is about realizing that you are capable of much more than you ever thought. English became more than a language to me. It became a teacher, a mirror, a gentle companion, a door to new worlds, a source of confidence, a reminder that small steps lead to big transformations. And as my journey reached this final point, I felt something beautiful. I wasn't learning at English anymore. I was living with English. Learning English without a teacher taught me one of the greatest lessons of my life. You don't need perfect conditions to grow. You don't need someone to guide every step. You don't need to rush or compare or prove anything. All you need is consistency. All you need is courage. All you need is the quiet belief that every small effort matters. If you are learning alone, please remember this. Your journey is not weaker because you walk it by yourself. It is stronger, more personal, more meaningful, more powerful. Every mistake you make becomes part of your story. Every moment of understanding becomes a small victory. Every sentence you speak becomes a step forward. Be patient with yourself. Be gentle with your progress. Celebrate your growth, even the quiet kind that nobody sees. And remember, you are not alone. Every learner feels uncertain at first. Every learner struggles. Every learner grows through small daily actions. If I could learn English without a teacher, slowly, patiently, and perfectly, then you can too. Not by forcing the language, but by living with it. Not by chasing perfection, but by embracing progress. Thank you for listening with me today. Thank you for giving yourself time to grow. And thank you for believing in your own journey. If you enjoyed this story, stay with us for the next one. Here at English Listening Practice Hub, learning becomes easier every time you listen.